Welcome back, Focus learners. Today's explainer is diving headfirst into some seriously bold claims about the mind-body connection. We're going to unpack this intriguing concept that suggests human beings have vastly untapped potential to actually influence our own physical healing using absolutely nothing but our thoughts. So it really all boils down to this fundamental question: can your mind actually heal your body? The author here is proposing something wild, that through very specific mental techniques, we can actively participate in our own physical recovery. It's a fascinating concept, and we're going to break down exactly how they argue this is all possible. Here's our roadmap for today. We're looking at 1. The power of the mind. 2. 6 steps to self-healing. 3. 3 cases of mental healing. 4. Mind control and cancer. And finally, 5. Visualizing your own recovery. All right, let's kick things off with section 1, the power of the mind. Right out of the gate, the author claims the mind plays this mysteriously powerful role in fighting off illness. They actually say they've met thousands of mind control graduates who have experienced these amazing self-healings. And it's all driven by this core belief that we literally already have the power inside us to supercharge our body's natural repair system. Now, what's super fascinating is how the source tries to normalize this. Let's be real, a lot of folks hear psychic healing and think it sounds a bit out there, right? But the author flips the script. They argue that powerful prescription drugs, the ones that carry some pretty intense health-threatening side effects, are actually the strange part. In their view, mental healing is totally safe, with 0 harmful side effects. But hold on, there is a massive caveat here that we absolutely have to mention. The text explicitly says, do not use these techniques to replace your modern medicine. Seriously, don't go canceling your doctor's appointments just yet. You need to consult your physician normally and follow their advice. The real goal here is just to supplement that standard treatment. To use your mind to speed up your recovery so much that you basically amaze your doctor. Okay, moving right along to section 2, 6 steps to self-healing. So the author lays out this really specific 6-step playbook. Step 1, you begin in what they call a beta state, basically just feeling loving and forgiving. Step 2, go to your level, which is a meditative state where you neutralize any negativity. Step 3 is pretty straightforward. You express a strong desire for a mental house cleaning. Now, step 4 is where it gets interesting. You mentally experience the illness on a sort of mental screen, but just briefly. Then, boom, step 5. You immediately erase that sick image and replace it by vividly experiencing yourself as completely cured. And finally, step 6, you reinforce the whole thing by telling yourself, every day, in every way, I'm getting better, better, and better. If you're wondering about the nuts and bolts of actually doing this, the text is super clear. The sweet spot is 15 minutes, and you should be doing it at least once a day. And here's a cool takeaway. Unlike some heavy meditative practices that warn you about withdrawing too much from the real world, the author insists you can't overdo this. Because you're actively tackling practical, real-world problems head-on, there's literally no such thing as too much here. All right, let's look at some real-world applications in section 3, 3 cases of mental healing. The author brings the theory to life with a few mini-narratives. First up is a Mrs. Wildowski. She ruptured her eardrum while diving, but by concentrating on the pain and just repeating gone, 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 the text claims her bleeding stopped immediately. Next, we have an unnamed physician dealing with absolute nightmare cluster migraines. Instead of popping aspirin, he supposedly mentally cycled out his headaches. And then there's Sister Barbara, a nun with astigmatism. She essentially programmed her eyes to focus like a camera lens every single time she blinked. Fast forward 2 weeks, and she supposedly stopped wearing her distance glasses entirely. Now, to back up that story about the nun, the source actually includes a quote from an optometrist, Dr. Richard Wolodaga, though full disclosure, the text notes he is also a mind control graduate himself. Anyway, examining Sister Barbara a year later, he stated, the patient has had a reduction in the amount of manifest myopia to a level where glasses have become unnecessary. So the source leans heavily on this to offer some medical validation for her vision improvement. Things take a more serious turn in section 4, mind control and cancer. Here, the text dives into the phenomenon of spontaneous remissions, which it defines simply as persons who, for no reason known to modern medicine, completely recover from cancer. To dig into this, the source highlights Dr. O. Carl Simonton, a cancer specialist and radiation therapist. His thought process was fascinating. He figured if he could just understand why these rare remissions happened, he might be able to intentionally trigger them in other patients. To test this out, Dr. Simonton studied the attitudes of 152 cancer patients, and the author claims he found a really distinct common thread among the survivors. They were overwhelmingly positive, optimistic, and highly determined folks. He really wanted to see if this optimism was playing a measurable role in their recovery alongside their standard radiation therapy. Well, looking at his findings, they're pretty stark. Dr. Simonton rated these patients' attitudes on a scale from strongly negative to strongly positive. Get this. Out of the group, the 20 patients with strongly positive attitudes showed an excellent response to therapy. And that's despite the fact that 14 of them supposedly had less than a 50% chance of living even 5 years. On the flip side, 22 patients who had strongly negative attitudes showed a poor response. So the author argues here that it was the attitude, not the severity of the illness itself, that really tipped the scales. To give this mind-body connection some serious historical weight, the text pulls a quote from Eugene Pendergrass, who was the president of the American Cancer Society back in 1959. He said, "It is my sincere hope that we can widen the quest to include the distinct possibility that within one's mind is a power capable of exerting forces which can either enhance or inhibit the progress of this disease." Pretty powerful stuff coming from that level of the medical establishment. Which brings us to our final part today, Section 5, Visualizing Your Own Recovery. According to the text, the absolute first step in this process is a total psychological reframe. Co-therapist Stephanie Matthews-Simpleton explains that patients have to banish their fear of the disease. Usually, we picture a cancer cell as this ugly, mean, insidious, unstoppable monster, right? But she argues the reality is totally different. She tells patients to visualize the cell as just a normal cell that's gone crazy. It's actually stupid, it starves its own blood supply, and it's fundamentally weak. The whole point here is to strip the disease of the immense psychological power we give it. So once you've conquered the fear, the Simonton method utilizes 3 basic visualization steps. First, visualize your disease as weak and confused. Second, visualize your treatment, like radiation or chemo, actively destroying those weak cells. And third, visualize your body's own immune mechanisms sweeping in, acting super strong and totally victorious. As the text puts it, the entire premise is about getting the body back winning again. Ultimately, the source boils down the entire goal of this mental imagery technique into one profound rule. Picture what you want to come about, even before you actually believe it will. The argument is that the sheer repetitive act of vividly imagining your healing creates this physiological self-regulation that ends up actively supporting your traditional medical treatments. Which leaves us with a really provocative question, based on the claims we've unpacked today. How much power does your mind truly hold over your health? I mean, whether we're talking about clearing up a headache or supposedly aiding in the fight against major diseases, the source material firmly argues that our thoughts are this massive, untapped medical tool. It definitely makes you think twice about the power of a positive attitude, doesn't it? Thanks for hanging out with me for this Explainer-focused learners. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you next time.